You are not going to believe where Lance Zierlein has Ashton Jeanty going in the 2025 NFL Draft, but we are here for it. And those are the landing spots that we're going to be working with today. Lance Zierlein's latest mock draft dropped on February 3rd. This is a 2025 rookie mock draft, 3 rounds, Superflex, tight end premium. So without further ado, let's get started with the $1 million question. Is Ashton Jeanty still the 101 if he's drafted by the New York Jets? And I don't know if Lance Zierlein just wanted to just take a poop on fantasy gamers everywhere with some of these landing spots. You can see them at the bottom of the screen there. Now, there are some good ones, I'm not going to lie, but the Ashton Jeanty one is certainly not ideal. Obviously, this would significantly hurt Breece Hall, but I do think that Ashton Jeanty is still the 101, even in a Superflex, tight end premium league, even if he's drafted by the Jets, and I'll tell you why. We would get top 10 draft capital. That's not what Breece Hall got. They have a new coaching staff there, and their first stamp on the roster, and I don't think they're going to do this, but, you know, this is what Lance Zierlein's world that we're living in. And I think that this would tell you that very much in the same way that the Detroit Lions did it with Jahmyr Gibbs, that the Jets are telling you how they're going to build their offense. They're building it with the running back. It may seem old school, but old school is making a comeback. I'm recording this before the Super Bowl, but Saquon Barkley had just an unbelievable year with the Eagles. And Ashton Jeanty's a really good prospect. He's the best offensive prospect in the draft, if you ask me. And I believe he would, not right away, but he would overtake Breece Hall eventually and make this pick worth it at the 101. But let me know what you think. What would you do in the comments? We'll move on to the 102 now that the great question is over with. The 102. And I think it has to be Tet McMillan, because if he gets drafted by the Bengals, I think it would be a sign that the Bengals have moved on from T. Higgins. They're spending significant draft capital here on a wide receiver. And Joe Burrow, and I know the defense is not going to be this bad every single year, and they fired their defensive coordinator, and things, I mean, I don't know if Joe Burrow is going to be throwing 650 passes every year, but in this offense, Tet McMillan would be awesome. This would be a fantastic landing spot. It's even good enough to where I would consider taking him with the 101. Now, obviously, I didn't do that, but it's that good of a landing spot. Even though, you know, he's drafted middle of the first round, not where we would want him to go, not where a lot of people think he's going to go. But I do think he would belong at the 102 if the Bengals draft him, because, wow. Let's go Cam Ward at the 103. This is a very safe pick. The Tennessee Titans. Now, the rumor is the Titans, they don't want to draft a quarterback. They're willing to move on from the number 1 pick. But this is also smart by the Titans, because why wouldn't you at least explore the opportunity to trade the number 1 pick? Because you never know what some team is willing to give up for. You never know what teams are willing to do to get who they think is the quarterback of the future. And if you don't believe that the quarterback of the future is in this draft, which I don't, then it would be wise to at least explore what you can get for the number 1 pick. In this world, the Tennessee Titans are taking Cam Ward, and I don't think it's the worst landing spot in the world. I don't think the offensive line is terrible. I think Calvin Ridley's a decent player. I think there's a good chance that they improve their offensive skill players. So I don't think this is the worst landing spot in the world for Cam Ward. So I think he's a pretty safe pick here in Superflex. Now, the next pick we're going to make is Shedeur Sanders. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of Shedeur Sanders, but I cannot deny if he gets drafted by the Raiders, I've gone back and forth on this, it would signal that he's in a pretty good landing spot. I know Pete Carroll's there now, so he doesn't necessarily have an offensive-minded head coach, but it's a serious coach there who is going to be able to help him. And they have Brock Bowers, they have Jacoby Myers, My guess is they're going to be able to improve their skill position players. They're going to be able to improve their offensive line in the offseason. So it's not, again, it's similar to Cam Ward. It's not, you think Raiders and you think, oh, the terrible situation for a rookie quarterback to be in, but not necessarily the case. You have a grown-up coach. You have good weapons with a chance of them getting better. So I like Shedeur Sanders here in Superflex. Now, this is where it gets interesting because do you go Luther Burden with the Seahawks or do you go Emeka Egbuka getting drafted a little bit later with the Texans? And I think it's clear. I don't really like that Luther Burden landing spot really whatsoever. And I'm going Emeka Egbuka. I think that this is absolutely perfect for a player winding up with the Houston Texans. And let's face it, Tank Dell has dealt with injuries over the past couple seasons. Stephon Diggs is an unrestricted free agent, according to Spotrax this year. I suppose they could bring him back. And it's weird how the contract schedule or structure because there's all these void years on the end of it. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly what that means. I'm not a cap expert, but it says unrestricted free agent 2025. So I think, and he signed a 1-year deal, so he's an unrestricted free agent. I don't know why I'm going on and on about this, but the point is, with C.J. Stroud, with that offense, I think Egbuka would be the perfect complement to a player like Nico Collins, and I think he would be really good in that system right away. Now, let me just double check here. We will be taking Luther Burden here, even though I don't necessarily like the landing spot. DK Metcalf's already there. JSN's already there. I don't know why the Seahawks would make this pick. I don't know why they would feel like replacing Tyler Lockett with Luther Burden. I don't know if they're just would be hell-bent on having the best wide receiver core in the National Football League, but selecting Luther Burden would definitely make that happen, I think. I mean, let me know what you think. I mean, they definitely give any team in the NFL a run for their money. Geno Smith, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of him being able to facilitate multiple wide receivers, and I think Burden would just be bogged down by some of those other skill players, and I don't, and it's not like those guys are going away. I don't necessarily think JSN's going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah, DK Metcalf is signed through 2025, unrestricted free agent in 2026, so it could potentially be a DK Metcalf replacement, I suppose, but I don't love it, to be honest with you. So that's why Egbuka over Burden. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Let's move on to pick number 7. And I think at this point, I want to take running backs because the running backs are the strength of this class. I think that by the end of this draft, you'll see a bunch of running backs come off the board, and for good reason. And Omarion Hampton's one of those super producers who's big, he's physical, he can run in between the tackles, he can catch passes, he can pass protect. I think he's a true workhorse running back. And there's so many good landing spots in round 2, even though he doesn't get drafted in round 1 here. In round 2, there's so many good spots that he could wind up, especially considering how, Lance Zierlein has round 1 going, where really, I mean, Ashton Jeanty is the only running back that comes off the board in round 1. So that leaves the Broncos, the Steelers if they move on from Najee Harris, the Cowboys, the Bears potentially, and so many more good landing spots. The Patriots, the Raiders, the Chargers. I'm probably missing some, but you get the picture. There's so many good landing spots for a running back this year, and for that reason, I'm also going to take Kaleb Johnson here. And I get it. We don't know where they're landing necessarily because we only have 1 round worth of draft picks here. But Kaleb Johnson, I just got done doing a deep dive. It's going to be on the channel soon. He is such a polarizing prospect in the sense that he was awesome this year. Now for a big running back, he does go down quite easily, but when he gets out in open space, he's really tough to catch. And I'd be interested to see what his 40 time is. I know it's projected to be in the 4.5s. To me, and I don't know if this is a bold take, I don't know if this is stupid or not, but he looks faster than, mid 4.5s. He looks like a low 4.5s, high 4.4s, speed at that size. I think it's really good. I think he's a better pass catcher than we might think. I think he's smooth in that regard. I do think he needs some work in pass pro, so I think that could hurt him. But overall, a dynamic talent and a dynamic prospect, and I think he's going to land well. So Kaleb Johnson at the 108. At the 109, I can't let Tyler Warren fall any further. Tyler Warren, if he gets drafted in the top 10, especially if he goes to the Panthers, I mean, talk about a great landing spot with Bryce Young, with an offensive-minded head coach there. Bryce Young was playing better towards the end of the year, and adding a tight end, a legitimate tight end in round one, probably not the direction I would go if I were them. I'd probably add an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, but they select a tight end, and that's going to be really good for Bryce Young, especially as he continues to develop. So, and I like Tyler Warren a lot. He's my tight end one in this class. Now, let's move on to the 110, and wow, what a landing spot for Tre Harris. He's going to be the 110 for me. Big wide receiver. You know, he's probably going to run in the 4.5s. This would signal to me that, the Bills are probably not adding a wide receiver in free agency. They would probably roll with Tre Harris, Khalil Shakir, and Keon Coleman, and Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. That's not a bad bunch of receivers. It's a lot of unproven players, Keon Coleman and Tre Harris, but Tre Harris has all the upside in the world, and with Josh Allen throwing those deep passes, I really like this, and that's why I have him at the 110. I think that would be so good for that offense. And let's make this next pick. We're gonna go back to the running backs. And we're going to go with Quinshon Judkins. And I'll tell you why I like Quinshon Judkins over TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson might be what we look for from a fantasy perspective. And I do think TreVeyon Henderson's awesome. But I like Quinshon Judkins from the sense that he's very much in the similar vein as these other running backs. He's big. He's physical. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can pass protect. Again, I think he's a true 3-down running back in the National Football League. And I saw multiple plays on tape where Quinshon Judkins is doing things like blocking on a quarterback sweep to win the game, throwing the key block there. He's just a dog. Like, Quinshon Judkins is just a dog and an awesome, awesome player. So let's not waste any time. I mean, TreVeyon Henderson is also a really phenomenal talent, and he might be more of what we want in our running backs in 2025. He might be a better pass catcher. He might be faster, a little bit more elusive. I get it. I'm seeing a whole bunch of tweets where people are coming out and saying, they have TreVeyon Henderson as their RB2 above Kaleb Johnson, above Omarion Hampton. I wouldn't go that far. I think it speaks to the talent in this running back class that TreVeyon Henderson is my RB5. And he's still going in the first round here in the Superflex tight end premium rookie draft with all these, fantastic landing spots, Egbuka, Tre Harris, Tyler Warren, Tet McMillan, Ashton Jeanty. We all know how I feel about that. But nevertheless, I just have Quinshon Judkins by a nose. Let me know what you think in the comments. So we're moving on to the second round. We're going to go, and I begrudgingly, this is probably the biggest L that I have to take, and it's not even an L yet. I haven't even lost anything yet, but I'm just ceding ground, if that's even how I would explain that. I'm giving ground to the people who are saying that Travis Hunter is going to play cornerback at the next level with a package here at wide receiver sprinkled in. It really looks like that's what's going to happen. And even though he gets drafted in the top 5 to the Giants, I hate that landing spot. I really do. Because that would signal to me that the Giants are going to use him as a cornerback. They already have Malik Neighbors there. If he plays wide receiver, he's going to be the wide receiver 2. on an offense where we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. The head coach is a lame duck. The general manager is a lame duck. It's just a terrible, terrible situation. And the division's really good. And and the defenses in that division, in my opinion, are only going to get better. So, again, I don't like the Travis Hunter landing spot whatsoever, and I've been moving him further and further down my rookie rankings begrudgingly because I acknowledge what everybody's saying is probably true. He's probably going to be a cornerback primarily at the next level. Let's move on down to the 202. And this is fascinating. I haven't done my homework on this guy. I haven't dug into the all 22 yet. I've seen highlights, I've seen clips, but I haven't done the work that I want to do yet on Matthew Golden, and I cannot deny if he's taken by the Steelers at pick 21 in the first round, this is probably as late as he should go. You can make a case for taking him above Tre Harris. You can make a case for taking him above the running backs. I wouldn't do it, but I can understand why somebody would. And so more work to do on Matthew Golden, but I have to take him here in this rookie draft because of the draft capital, because of the landing spot. I think there's going to be targets, plenty of targets in that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. I know that there's uncertainty at quarterback, but I like that situation as a whole for somebody to come in there because George Pickens has not lived up to the hype. He just hasn't. So anyway, I also can't let Colston Loveland fall any further, so he's going to be my pick here. And I believe that's going to round out everybody who was taken in Lance Zierlein's mock draft. Colston Loveland, if he goes to with the Broncos, with Bo Nix, again, he's another player you could argue that should have been taken higher, but I couldn't take him over, Tre Harris in Buffalo or any of the other running backs there in the first round. So I get it. I like the Broncos situation quite a bit. I do. But this is where I would have him in the rookie draft. Now we are basically going off of my rankings. So, and I've made some updates as well. So you're going to see a lot of running backs start to come off the board. And the first one is going to be Dylan Sampson. And Sampson I got into some trouble with one of the videos that I made calling him a new age running back. And the reason I did that was because he's a little bit smaller, he's a little bit quicker, a little bit more elusive pass catcher. He produced at Tennessee when Jalen Wright was there, which I thought was really impressive. And this year, he just had a mega super producer type season. And when you watch the film on Dylan Sampson, you can see just how elusive he is. And it's not a perfect comparison, but he's very similar to the Keaton Mitchells, the Devon Chains, dare I say the Jahmyr Gibbs, the elusive running back who's a little bit undersized but can stay healthy because, let's face it, teams are not necessarily using the bell cow running back anymore. And that's perfect for fantasy because we know players like Dylan Sampson, players like Devon Chain, Keaton Mitchell are going to be extremely efficient with the touches that they get. One, because they're going to be healthy because the other running back allows them to stay healthy, takes those carries in between the tackles, in between the 20s. We know that they're going to be efficient, and we know that they're going to be healthy because they don't have to take those carries, like I just said. There was another point in there I was going to make, and then my brain got in the way of that, so I apologize. But the next player that we're going to take is Devin Neal. And he's another one of these players that was just produced in every single season at Kansas. I love his running style. It reminds me of a patient running style, very similar to Le'Veon Bell. I'm not comping him to Le'Veon Bell, but maybe a little bit lesser version of Le'Veon Bell. But just watch him play. I just love his running style, and I think some NFL team is going to really like it as well. And I think he's going to get day 2 draft capital, which would justify the pick here in the middle of the second round. Let's go to Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State. Very similar to another Oklahoma State running back in Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard had a fantastic season and then dropped. A lot of people thought he would go a lot higher in rookie drafts and the NFL draft. And who knows? I think Ollie Gordon's good enough to be taken on day 2. An NFL team or the NFL might say otherwise, but I think he's a talented guy who was just in a bad situation this year at Oklahoma State. I think the team was bad. It's very similar to Luther Burden, who, was taken in this rookie draft a round earlier at the 1-6. And, teams are not, according to the mock drafts, it really looks like Luther Burden's going to go in round 1, maybe even early round 1. So, I've seen him go to the Cowboys, but Ollie Gordon, I just, it's not every day you have a player that size that can catch passes, that's produced the way he has. So that's why he's being selected here. Now, Jordan James is up next, but I do want to make a caveat. I do want to say something, and let me just make sure that, my head is screwed on right here. And because this is where I would really consider Jalen Noel. And Jalen Noel, since the Senior Bowl, has really flown up my rankings. Just hearing how he did at the Senior Bowl, turning on the tape, digging in a little bit. Again, he's not a player that I've watched, 3 or 4 full games on. It's on my list of things to do, but just digging into what I've seen so far, Jalen Noel, this is where I would take him now. As you just saw, I looked for him, and he's not in the sleeper database. When this video gets published, there's no question that they'll update it, just like they did with the other rookie mock draft that I did. But anyway, this is the range where I would consider a Jalen Noel, but I'm going to take Jordan James here. But again, the 207, Jalen Noel, middle of the second round, is the range that I would consider taking him. Now Jackson Dart did not go in this Lance Zierlein mock draft, but I really like what I see from Jackson Dart, and I would be worth taking a shot on him in the middle to back half of the second round, even if he doesn't get drafted in the first round, because I think it would be wise of a team to take a chance on Jackson Dart, let him sit for a year, pair him with Sam Darnold, pair him with Jameis Winston, pair him with Kirk Cousins, one of these quarterbacks that can really usher him along and give him a window or, a takeoff ramp, for lack of a better word. I don't even know if that's a word. Give him a runway. There we go. A runway to be as successful as he can be. I think that would be a really good plan for some team. And my guess is that he's going in the first round. So again, we'll see. But I really like Jackson Dart. He's my quarterback 3. Let's go back to the running back and take Brashard Smith. I think just talking with Matt Babich about this on the Dynasty Roundtable, which is, by the way, you should be subscribed over to the Dynasty Roundtable on YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. Me and Matt Babich, basically that's all we do, is talk about Dynasty rookies. Dynasty mock draft startups, which you could be a part of. All you got to do is DM me on Twitter at Seth_DIEWOLD. But we think Brashard Smith is very similar to Tyrone Tracy, and there's several reasons why. He was at the University of Miami, Florida. He was a wide receiver there. He wasn't necessarily getting the playing time that he thought he might get. He transfers to SMU. He switches positions, and then all of a sudden, bam, he just makes a huge impact on an SMU team that was really able to move the ball this year. And he's a big reason why. And his tape is really good. He's just a really good player. And I think this speaks to the fact that you can get a Brashard Smith in the second round, late second round, is the very reason why you should be trying to get all of these second, third, fourth round rookie picks, in my opinion, because I wanted to be taking shots on all these guys. At the 210, I just dug into the Cam Scatabo tape. And I'll just give you a little sneak peek right now. Again, this episode is going to be coming out on this channel, so make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when it drops. We're going to do a full deep dive of Cam Scatabo on this channel. Cam Scatabo is really freaking good, man. He is really freaking good. My only concern is, does he have the top end speed to really... Or rather, does he have enough speed to really make an impact as a starting running back in the NFL? Because we need him to be a starter. We can't have him playing, 30% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps. Now, ironically, his comp, that the working comp that I have for him right now, is David Montgomery. And David Montgomery's making it work with a 40-50% snap share in Detroit. But that's Detroit with one of the best offensive lines in football and a really good offense there as well. And, they're going to have to replace their offensive coordinator. They probably, maybe they already have. I don't know. But again, like, that situation is unique and different. It doesn't always work out that way. But Cam Scatabo, very similar to David Montgomery. And again, I really like the prospect, and I'd be willing, if you get Cam Scatabo late second round, early third round in your rookie draft, I think that's the perfect spot to take him. Now, there's significant chance that he goes on day 3, and if that happens, you're going to be able to scoop him up even later in the third round, and I would definitely do that. I mean, obviously landing spot's going to matter, but I'm a huge fan of Cam Scatabo. And this is where I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this player, but this is where I cannot deny the rushing upside with a Jalen Milroe. If he lands well, even in the second or third round or wherever he's taken, he could have a significant impact for fantasy football just with his rushing upside. There really isn't a quarterback that's like him in this class that has the rushing upside. Jackson Dart maybe a little bit, but Jalen Milroe is that quarterback in this class. If he, we saw Jalen Hurts go in the second round. I'm not saying he's Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's anywhere close to Jalen Hurts. But at the 211, I think it's a nice upside shot to take. At the 212, this guy's really fallen since the Senior Bowl, and I try not to overreact. But Xavier Restrepo, he, by all accounts, he didn't necessarily have the greatest Senior Bowl. So I have moved him down a little bit, but he's still here at the back end of the second round. I still like his tape, what I've seen of it. I think he's a good route runner, who's probably going to play the slot at the next level. So again, I'm probably a little bit higher on Restrepo than a lot of people, but he's still here at the second round for me. Let's move on to the third round, shall we? Let's do it. And I'm going to throw another running back up in DJ Giddens. Now, DJ Giddens produced at Kansas State. He's a bigger running back, very much in the same vein as some of these other running backs here. So he's a player that I really like from what I've seen so far. So, and I think that there's a chance, again, that he's another one of these day 2 guys that these running backs, it's just going to be nuts. Like, I think we're going to see a ton of them go off in day 2, because there's a bunch of teams that need running back. I think it's going to be nuts, and I think Giddens has a chance to be one of those guys. Now, let's go to one of my favorite wide receivers, who had one of the best games against Travis Hunter as a cornerback at when he was playing with Stanford. That's the only college I think he's played for. Alec Ayumanor, another big physical wide receiver who I think is going to run pretty well. I think he's going to test pretty well, and I think he has a chance to go day 2. I think he's kind of a sleeper right now, although everybody's definition of a sleeper is all over the place. So I don't know if I'll get hate in the comments for calling him a sleeper, but I do think he's a sleeper because I don't really hear anybody talking about him. But I think he's really, really good. So, again, I have him over Jaden Higgins right now, although Jaden Higgins is coming up in this mock draft. And now Damian Martinez, I think, is going to come off the board here. Another one of these guys I don't necessarily hear a lot of people talking about, but, when you pull up just what he was able to do at Miami, and you kind of look at the size, it's impressive, and this is why, again, I would be trying to get some of these running back or trying to get some of these third round picks, because just look, he transfers to Miami, over 1,000 rushing yards. Now, he doesn't necessarily have the receiving chops that we like. He hasn't gotten 20 receptions in a season. He hasn't gotten that benchmark, but he's averaged over 6 yards a carry in every season, had over 1,100 rushing yards in his sophomore season at Oregon State. I think he's a really good player, and getting him in round 3 feels pretty good. So let's now let's get the other. Let's just get the other Iowa State wide receiver that showed out at the Senior Bowl. You could make an argument that he should go higher than this. I don't know if he will in rookie drafts, especially Superflex, but he's really good. Like, it's all going to depend on landing spot. I mean, he could be a day 3 guy, but Higgins is one of these bigger wide receivers. I heard Debro talk about the Broncos. Like, if he lands with somewhere like the Broncos, that would be incredible as Sean Payton's next Michael Thomas. Now, that's making us all salivate, made me salivate. So let's please make that happen, Sean Payton. And if that happens, even if it's day 3, I think he'd be worth, maybe even taking a little bit higher than this. Let's move on to the 305, and let's take one of my favorite prospects. I can't believe I haven't taken him already, in Jalen Royals. Another player who had a really good Senior Bowl. He has good size. He has good speed. He's raw as heck. But if some NFL team looks at him and goes, we can mold that ball of clay into something, he can be really, really special, and he has all the upside in the world. So I really like Jalen Royals here. And let's move on to the 306 and take the fastest rising tight end from the Senior Bowl. And a big change in my rankings. Elijah Arroyo is my tight end 3 now because of the Senior Bowl, because of the reporting that came out of there. And then, he's one of these guys that has always kind of been in the minds of the Devy players, from what I'm hearing. We haven't really heard from him because he hasn't really produced up until, this. Obviously he had a really good Senior Bowl, and then this year he had 590 receiving yards as a junior, or as a 4th-year junior, and before that he really didn't produce at all. So I think a lot of analysts were just like, what do we do with this guy? And then he shows up at the Senior Bowl, does what he does. I've moved him up significantly. So again, let me know what you think of that in the comments. I still do like Harold Fannin Jr. quite a bit, but I have Arroyo over him right now. So let's go to Isaiah Bond. I don't know how Texas keeps finding these speedsters, but in the middle of the 3rd round, I think Isaiah Bond is a really good pick to make a ton of upside, speed, man. Like that's the game with Isaiah Bond, and I don't think he's necessarily as good of a route runner as Xavier Worthy, but I don't think he's a scrub in that department either. So again, I think you could do a lot worse than Isaiah Bond in the 3rd round, and I know Tej Johnson is undersized. But dang it, if he's not smooth as silk, just running those routes. And again, he had a really good Senior Bowl as well. And I think in this day and age in the NFL, I think an undersized receiver has more of a chance than ever before. And Tej Johnson just looks really, really good to me. I will take Harold Fannin here at the 3-9. Again, a lot of upside with this pick, and that's the theme of this 3rd round. If I'm in the 3rd round, I'm making picks that are upside picks. And Harold Fannin at tight end is one of those players that I think could be really, really good if he lands well. Now let's move on to the 310. And again, another player that did really well at the Senior Bowl, Jack Beck, baby. Jack Beck has been on my radar for quite some time, and then people like Debro, other people reporting from the Senior Bowl have just confirmed my suspicions that I think this guy's a really good player, and he's one of these guys that is, maybe some people don't know what to do with him because he did start out as a tight end at LSU, and he's bigger. He's 6'2", over 200 pounds. But his freshman season at LSU, 489 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. And then he just kind of got, 200 receiving yards the next year. Then he transfers, 146 receiving yards. And then this year at TCU, over 1,000 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, as my voice cracks there. So again, we're almost done. We're rounding the home stretch here, and we're gonna make these next two picks. This isn't because his name is really hard to say, but I think Bashul Tutin, if I'm saying that right, is somebody I'm really intrigued with. And if I have a pick at the end of the third round or even into the fourth round, you may not even have to select him this high. But Bashul Tutin is somebody who's really fast. Not the same as perhaps Dylan Sampson. I don't think he's that good. But, at Virginia Tech this year, over 1,100 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns, back-to-back seasons over 20 receiving yards. And again, if you look at his projected 40 time, he's gonna move and he's gonna test well, and he has a really good chance to rise up these rankings. He's 5'11", 209, projected 40 time, probably gonna run in somewhere in the 4.3s, low 4.4s at worst. So again, a guy with a lot of upside. And then at the 312, we're gonna take Rocket Sanders. I don't even know if that's his name anymore, but Raheem Sanders is somebody who I've always been really intrigued with. He's big. He produced at Arkansas. Only played in 6 games in 2023, but then transferred in 2024. Had a decent season. 800, just over 800, well, almost 900 rushing yards. Caught 20 passes, 27 passes, 316 yards. Has 2 seasons on his resume, full seasons where he's caught over 20 receptions, which we like for fantasy. And again, he's one of these guys who is big, and he's probably going to run in the 4.4, so he could be a sleeping giant in this class. So he should test really well. And that is it. Thank you for watching. How would you have handled this mock draft differently? I would love to hear from you. Let me know about all the dumb picks that I made, maybe even the smart ones if you're feeling nice. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.